Hey guys, Magnus Robert here, bringing you another Dead Walking Dead character video, and this one will be on Luke Abrams, member of Magna's group and boyfriend to Jules Butler. Luke is of course male, he is played by Dan Fogler, he is late 30s to early 40s and first appeared in What Comes After. Before the outbreak, Luke likely had a musical childhood and learned many instruments including the violin, the guitar, the piano, the harmonica and even the kazoo. Due to this, he studied to become a teacher in music, and Luke worked his professional life as a music teacher. He also dabbled in the culinary arts. When the outbreak began, Luke got lucky and was in the right place at the right time. He eventually met a group of women, a couple, Magna and Yumiko, and two sisters, Connie and Kelly. After Luke joined them, they found Bernie, and he joined their group too. Luke began to learn ALS in order to understand and communicate with Connie. Eventually, they arrived at Coalport, a community located by the sea. Sadly, this community was attacked or overrun. Most of the survivors here fled via boat, but Luke and his group decided to flee via land. They then arrived at a community called Jones Springs, which seemed to be as bad as Coalport. Alas, Jones Springs was overrun too, and Luke and the group fled. They travelled around on a rig that horses pulled, and they had other people in their group too, but they lost these others along the way. As they travelled, Luke would quote-unquote rescue musical instruments that he would come across, his prized one being an original Stradivarius, circa 1725, which he found in a kid's room in a mansion in Philadelphia. They were travelling in Virginia one day on their rig when they were attacked by the dead. Unfortunately, their horses and Bernie were attacked by the dead and killed. Luke was torn up about his death. In Season 9, Luke is first seen distraught by his rig surrounded by the herd of walkers. He stabs a walker and Yumiko falls on a rock, so Luke comes to her aid with the rest of the group. He helps her up and then they decide to go back to back and fight. Magna wants to just open up a path and they're surrounded by the dead when suddenly someone from the woods shoots the dead and clears a path for them. Luke shouts, "Go!" and they run towards the young voice telling them to come this way. They rush through the trees, Luke picking up Yumiko when she falls again, and they eventually meet Judith Grimes. Magna names all of her group members and Judith drops her name too. Luke and the others eventually meet with the rest of Judith's group. Luke explains what happened to their rig and how they owe their lives to Judith. After sensing this group will not welcome them, Luke points to the book that Eugene has and tells him he can make it into a mighty fine ossobuco. Eugene shuts it down because they make stew. The walkers, or sickos as Luke would call them, begin to approach and Luke watches Eugene deal with them. With more walkers on the way, Aaron agrees to bring Luke and his friends back to their home. He has a hood placed over his head but is taken to Alexandria. He's impressed by the size of the walls and the group ponder if it will be worse than the other communities they've been a part of, Luke commenting how shit Coalport was. Judith then leads Magna and the others inside. As Luke enters and looks around, he is stunned and amazed at how advanced it all is. Yumiko gets to go to the infirmary and suddenly Michonne rides in. She isn't happy that they're there and stares them all down and also pats down Magna. Eventually a decision is made to vote via the council tomorrow if Luke and his friends can stay or not. They're all taken then to a holding house. The next day a vote is held in the meeting hall and Luke explains the history of their group to Gabriel, mentioning Bernie, forgetting that he died yesterday. Luke mentions that there were others too, like Bernie, but they're all gone. He's asked who he was before and he explains he was a music teacher. The other group members explain their jobs and then they're all asked who they are now and Luke guesses he's still a music teacher, commenting education never ends and not even in the face of the dead. The other group members are asked what they did to survive, which they answer, and Luke says he didn't do anything special and doesn't know what he did to deserve it. He was just lucky and met the right people. He ponders that if they were to see him and his friends at a bar, you would think that they must work together because they have very little in common, other than they're still breathing. Aaron thanks them all. Michonne though speaks up with a mini-speech and exposes Magna for being an ex-convict. Luke seems to look annoyed. Michonne figured it out and pissed off that Magna was hiding a knife, which Michonne discovers too. Michonne storms out telling them to have their damn vote, refusing to answer Magna's questions. Luke visits Yumiko at the infirmary along with Magna and he asks Sadiq when did he join Alexandria. Sadiq explains he was taken in and he was a stranger and Luke asked what changed in regards to the community taking in strangers. And Sadiq just says there's a reason for everything. At night, they hold up in the holding house. Luke puts down the blinds as Magna apologises for screwing them over during the council vote. Magna explains she kept the secret belt knife to have options, but Luke points out Yumiko's necklace knife thingy is still around Magna's neck and demands that she hands it over. She nearly does, but cries that they can't just go back out there. Luke says If they have to, they'll try to survive as long as they can, day by day, minute by minute, same as always. But Magna bites back that really didn't work out for poor old Bernie. She comments that Bernie would love it here and that they should fight for their place, but Luke admits they don't have a choice. He eventually stands up and says fighting debate style is fine, but physically no, because they've got kids here. He starts a vote within his group to make sure everyone is in agreement with him, demanding that she now hands over the knife necklace, which Magna does. He tells her to sleep on it. The next morning, Luke prepares with the others to leave Alexandria. He pats Yumiko when she jokes she should have hit her head harder so they could stay longer. He thanks Sadiq for his help and shakes Gabriel's hand too. He especially thanks Judith for saving them. Michonne suddenly rides over and announces that she's actually going to escort them with Sadiq to the hilltop instead, as they might be accepted there. They begin to make their way there, deciding to head to their rig first before going to the hilltop. Luke sits in the horse-pulled wagon, and Magna complains she doesn't have her knives, and they're out in the open. Luke quips that if she didn't give Michonne a reason not to trust them, then they might still have their options. Kelly tells everyone to chill. They arrive at their rig and Luke comments that the damn sickos have torn it up and he's sad that his former home is destroyed. Luke then kills a zombie trapped under his rig using a branch. He looks around for his musical instrument, commenting Connie doesn't appreciate his love for music, and no, Connie, it's not a fetish. Michonne takes their weapons and Magna is mad. Luke is cool with it though, as long as they're going to a safe community. Kelly for a moment wants to take their chances, but Yumiko talks sense into everyone, telling them that Luke is right. They have longer to ride to the hilltop, so they all decide to stay a night in an old factory. At some point, Luke located his prized Stradivarius. He begins tuning it or something, and Michonne comes behind him thinking it's a weapon. Luke tries to explain he can't just drop it, and it's not a weapon, but Michonne strikes his instrument, cutting it in two. Luke screams, waking everyone up. He holds his broken Stradivarius, upset. Some minutes later, Luke is still in disbelief and Michonne tries to say sorry, but Luke just gloats how rare and precious it is, but he's able to smile through the pain. Yumiko explains the story behind the Stradivarius, and Sadiq is puzzled on why Luke has been travelling with instruments all this time. Luke says it's art. He goes on this big tangent. Are you ready? So, how do you think humans defeated Neanderthals? Why are we here and they're not? Well, archaeologists found a 40,000-year-old flute in a cave. They realised that maybe ancient humans didn't defeat Neanderthals. They came together and shared music and painting and art. They then built communities and grew, and as they grew, Neanderthals retreated and they just died out. Music brings everyone together. Okay, I hope that makes sense to you guys. Michonne asks Luke, does he think something like music is all it takes? And Luke nods. Survival of the fittest is one thing, but being together makes them stronger. Luke packs as Sadiq tries to convince Michonne to come with. DJ informs of walkers and they rush out, Luke holding his bag in a very dorky way. They make their way to the horses, Michonne eventually allowing them to have their weapons. Walkers are heading for their horses and Yumiko tells Luke to stay with Sadiq and DJ as the rest try and save the horses. Luke uses car doors to block zombies, then one grabs him by surprise. Luckily, Connie gets it with her slingshot and saves him. As they begin to clear the herd and save the horses, a zombie Bernie stumbles on over. Luke is shocked and upset as he watches Michonne put him down after Magna is unable to. They're forced to hurry and leave as walkers continue to come. Luke then sits in the wagon as they carry on travelling to the hilltop. Michonne stops and her and Sadiq argue about coming to the hilltop, but when Roy and his friend ride over to inform them about an injured Rosita, Michonne tags along. Connie notices something in the woods, most likely a whisperer, and Luke looks concerned, but they decide it was nothing. Anywho, they ride up to the hilltop, and as they approach, the residents scatter in fear. Luke points it out to his friends. As the guards all form on the hilltop walls and the tension seems thick, Magna tells Luke and the others to be ready to leave, as if she was them, she would shoot an arrow at any of them that she didn't like the look of. Luke thinks that that's silly, because they're a solid group, they're a little scrappy, but then he shits himself when he sees Diane with a bow. Michonne talks with her, and they're all expected to drop their weapons. Magna protests, but Luke and the others give her a look, and she hands them all over. They are let into the gates, and Luke looks around. Tara tells Luke that they'll have to wait till Jesus gets back to find out if they can stay, adding that they'll have to earn their keep. Luke walks to the Barrington house, amazed once more. The morning after, Luke exits the Barrington house looking all cheerful. He sees Tara, Alden, Enid and some others having a little meeting, and he overhears that they need an extra person for the search party looking for Jesus, Eugene, Daryl and all that, and he volunteers himself. They don't really listen to him at first, but he pleads his case and Alden agrees Luke can ride with him. Alden shakes Luke's hand, introducing themselves to each other, and he thanks him. Alden kisses his girl and calls Luke Professor, telling him to saddle up. They ride out on horseback and begin to scout, and Alden tells Luke about the fair, asking him if he plays music, because some music at the fair could be nice. Luke lists the instrument he can play, and Alden comments he's been known to sing. Luke says that they can kill them dead at the fair as a duo. Suddenly they see one of Yumiko's arrows and Luke draws attention to it. As Luke inspects it, a zombie approaches. He plans to use the arrow, but another zombie grabs him by the leg, knocking him on his ass. Alden throws a spear and kills the first walker, giving Luke the opportunity to kill the second one. After dusting himself off, Luke proclaims that they can be a two-man band, a symphony of awesome. He highlights it's Yumiko's arrow and finds another one, predicting that Yumiko must be leaving them as a trail. Alden thinks they're just stray arrows, and Luke says, "Okay, mate, money where your mouth is. If they lead us to our friends, you'll sing at the fair." Alden has a look in his binoculars telling Luke that there's a herd coming south, saying they can't risk getting caught by it. Luke says whatever Alden wants to do, it's his call. Alden clearly agrees as they keep going and follow the arrow trail, finding another one. Luke telling Alden to warm his vocal cords up for the fair. They then see a weird-ass zombie. It's just sort of lurking about. Luke says he'll kill it, but stops when the zombie just stands still. They see another one and another one. It's the Whisperers, baby. Alpha throws an arrow at Luke's feet, pulls out a shotgun and tells both men that the trail ends here, taking both Luke and Alden captive. They both have Whisperer masks put on them, and they are soon brought to the hilltop in trade for Lydia, knives to their throats. They watch a small cluster of the dead approach and a baby be abandoned. Luke notices Connie and informs her using sign language covertly about the baby. He then watches Connie save it. When Lydia is handed back, Luke is returned to the hilltop and hugs his friends. Later, at night, Luke drinks with his favourite people, celebrating he's alive. Days later, they arrive at the kingdom for the fair, but they are worried about Connie because she's still out there with Daryl. Kelly wants to go look for her, but it's all good because Connie soon arrives. Luke looks happy and greets her. Luke then meets with Alden, telling him he knows he lost a bet, but he still wants Alden to sing with him, asking Enid to convince Alden to sing when Luke will be playing his guitar later. Enid calls him her boyfriend, and Luke watches them as they make that commitment to each other. He says congrats, and he hugs them. Luke says, forget about the bet, your girlfriend wants you to sing, asking him to think about it. Yumiko and Magna head out and Luke is disappointed. Yumiko tells him to break a leg and he asks her to try and make it for the second act at least. Luckily for Luke, Enid convinces Alden to sing and they practice on stage. Later, Luke and Alden perform for the crowd, but Alden's heart isn't in it because Enid is nowhere to be found. And sadly, as the fair comes to a close, Luke learns via Sadiq's speech about the beheadings and Enid's death. In the months between season 9 and 10, Luke trains with the militia, becoming more of a fighter. And he gets this cool, sick-ass weapon. In season 10, Luke trains at the oceanside with the others and kills walkers with his new cool weapon during the training exercise. Zombies get loose, but they're dealt with. Luke then talks to Jules after the battle about her scavenging missions and flirts a little. Luke untangles some ropes and he sort of struggles to flirt. He's a little bit nervous because Jules is coming a bit on strong, you know, and she straight up admits that she's flirting, and he says, yes, I am too, I'm with you, don't worry. After a Whisperer mask is found, Luke heads out with Alden to look for any other leads. They find a campsite, bodies and some Whisperer skin, confirming that the Whisperers are back. When the satellite crashes to Earth and causes a fire, Luke crosses the border with the others to help put out the fire, and when walkers approach, helps to kill them too. Eugene wants to strip the Soviet satellite for parts, and Luke wanders over, asking about possible radiation poisoning from the satellite. Eugene tells him it will be fine, and Luke then helps to scrap it. Days later, one night, Luke sees commotion at Hilltop when a tree falls down on the wall and a structure, injuring people and trapping them inside. Earl seems to think it wasn't just natural. They're still getting people out till the morning and Luke hears the walkers pounding on the wall and calls out about it. He runs out to take on the walkers along with his friends, and they seem to fight into the night, getting his weapon stuck in a walker's skull. He kills some more with his friends, but soon they're surrounded by the dead. They eventually retreat inside, but the wall collapses and the walkers flood into the community. Luckily, the Alexandrian convoy and Ezekiel come to the rescue. In the morning, Michonne holds a meeting wanting to go to Oceanside as there is suspected Whisperer activity there. Luke flexes cockroach knowledge to Eugene randomly, and then asks Michonne if he can go. The ocean is calling him. Yumiko jokes by ocean he means Jules. Luke pretends he doesn't know what she's on about, then acts awkward and embarrassed, being like, yeah, you mean that woman? Oh, right, yeah. As Luke prepares to leave, he hugs all of his friends goodbye, clearly very excited to be heading to the ocean. They then head off. On their travels, Scott stops and notices some recent tracks of someone. Michonne says they've got to be quiet, and Luke takes it as a personal attack, claiming he's just there to be a representative for the Hilltop. Judith jokes he's just here to see Jules. Luke then rambles about some music I can't care to pronounce. He sees that Judith is writing stories for the future and suggests they stop off at a library for some inspiration. Michonne doesn't want to, but gives in. They enter it and Luke calls Judith a smart one for finding something useful for Eugene. He goes to check out the music section and almost creams his pants when he finds a music book that he really likes and really wanted. Suddenly, Luke is grabbed by a walker and then grabbed by another from behind. He screams for help, but out of nowhere, Virgil saves him and he deals with the other one himself. Luke then tells Michonne and Scott what happened. Luke is in shock on how Virgil just showed up and left and asks Michonne if everything is okay, being told that Sadiq is dead. They're unable to find Virgil, so they carry on towards Oceanside, arriving there safely. When Virgil is captured by Oceanside members and then threatened by Michonne, Luke points out he's the guy who saved his life and asks Virgil how he is. Luke points out he doesn't seem like a whisperer when Michonne suspects that he could be. Luke then helps to deal with the oncoming walkers. The next morning, Luke is present as Michonne informs him of her plan to head to Virgil's island with him in order to collect some big weapons. Luke jokes that Judith will be looking after them, so they'll be safe. He then heads back to Hilltop with Judith and Scott. I'm going to assume that off-screen as well, he and Jules got it on. When he arrives back, he finds Connie and Magna are missing. He and Yumiko plan to go out searching, and he tries to tell Kelly that she can't come because of her bad ankle, asking Yumiko to back him up. Yumiko and Kelly have a little spat, and then they see Daryl return, and he projects his wish to go out there to look for his two missing friends. But Lydia shuts it down, saying that her mother is coming. Luke attends the meeting on what to do, and where they all discuss if they should fight or leave. When Daryl returns and informs them that they're going to have to stay and fight due to all the roads being blocked, a tearful Luke suggests that they can call Alexandria for reinforcements. That idea is shut down though. Earl then gives a little battle cry. Outside, Luke helps to prep for the battle, hammering in these thingies to help stop the herd, and suddenly they see rats running out from the woods, signalling that the Whisperers are coming. They rush back. The night comes, and with it, a battle. Luke fights like hell to push back the Whisperer horde, but eventually they're all covered in tree sap and the gates are set on fire. Luke retreats inside with the others and helps defend inside the walls. A wall eventually comes down and he goes to try and stop it. And at some point, and it might have been whilst trying to get this wall back up, Luke is knocked out and his unconscious body is put on a sled and it's dragged away by Aaron. Ultimately, Luke survives and eventually evacuates to the old hospital, also known as the Tower. He works on a speaker, but he's nervous because people are counting on him. Jules tells him he'll come through. He asks if someone will run an errand for him. Carol volunteers. Gabriel gives a speech and goes over the plan, asking Luke if he's ready. Luke tells the group that the speakers are ready, but in order to lure the dead away, he'll need to plug the speakers up to the wagon. So Luke has to go with the gut up group through the herd, and he guts up with Jules as she flirts. They head out the door and let the walkers into their little entranceway, heading outside and into the horde of walkers and Whisperers. As they head through the horde, Luke holds Jules' hand. Luke, Jules, Magna and Jerry make it through first and worried that they might be the only ones, but luckily the others make it too. Well, other than Beatrice. Off screen, Luke gets the wagon speaker contraption up and working and guards it with a bow and arrow as they lead the herd away. Night comes and the Whisperers try to attack the wagon. Luke fires arrows at the Whisperers. The wagon's wheel is eventually taken off, forcing Luke and the others to abandon it. Once in cover, Luke tells Daryl that everyone should have evacuated by now, but Daryl proposes they hunt the Whisperers within the herd. Lydia says she can lead the herd, but Luke points out without a wagon it'll be suicide. I don't know if Luke helped kill the Whisperers within the herd, but he may have. And later at the meet point, Luke says thanks all round, hugs Jules and says he can't believe that they pulled it off. In between Season 10 and Season 11, Luke moved full-time to the Oceanside community to be with Jules. The two also now, by this point, were officially an item. Although unseen, Luke was at Oceanside when the Commonwealth arrived, and when Lance and his cronies took the Oceanside by storm and rounded up all the residents, Luke and Jules were out scavenging. Luke wanted to stay and fight and didn't want to leave Rachel and the others, but he and Jules were told by Rachel to just run and to find help, so that's what they did, escaping from the Commonwealth troopers and being pursued by them. In Season 11, Luke and Jules stumble through the woods and eventually come across Aaron, Lydia, Jerry and Elijah, meeting the latter for the first time. Jerry mentions that they're going to go to Oceanside, but Luke reveals it's been taken over by the Commonwealth. Luke points out whatever deal Aaron and the others made clearly is no longer in effect, as they're all tracking them right now. Luke suggests that they get as far away from Oceanside as possible, and they agree and shoot off. They kill some dead and stop for a moment where Luke and Jules explain what happened back at Oceanside, reflecting he wished he stayed and fought. Suddenly, they hear troopers. They hide from them, unable to outrun them, instead deciding to gut up and travel with the herd. They travel with the herd towards Commonwealth as the troopers shine a bright light at them all and drive around them. But they don't spot them. Eventually the daylight comes and those same troopers are in their truck and directing the herd Luke and the others are in. Two other herds then join their herd, directed by troopers on dirt bikes. They decide to stop off at a trailer as they approach the Commonwealth. However, as Luke and Jules try to get into the trailer, the sheer force of the herd pulls Jules away. Luke tries to grab her, but she's pushed further and further away, so he decides to let go of the trailer and go after Jules instead. He stays in the herd as it goes through to the Commonwealth gates and into the city. The troopers begin to pin the herd into particular neighbourhoods, where eventually Luke notices all of his friends and rushes to them, holding his hand out and smiling. But there's a shot Judith and more zombies, so they're forced to move quickly. Luke helps to push the walkers back as Daryl and Judith then rush down an alleyway. As they fight the herd, Luke watches Jules be bitten by walkers. He shouts her name and rushes to her, stabbing the zombies, biting her arm. He tries to drag her away, saying, "You'll be okay," as another zombie grabs him and pushes him to the ground. He loses grip of Jules and she is devoured by the dead. Then, sadly, a walker takes a bite of Luke's leg. Connie and Kelly drag Luke away, but he's forced to watch his girlfriend be devoured by the zombies, screaming in sadness. Carol clears a path and Luke is dragged out of there by his friends and towards the Commonwealth Hospital. Off-screen, Kelly, Connie, Yumiko and Magna amputated Luke's leg in order to try to save him. However, with no doctors at the hospital and lots of blood loss, Luke cries with his friends knowing that he's not got long. He reaches into his pocket to give them a harmonica. They all laugh and Yumiko tells him that they'll keep the music alive for him and for everyone. Luke seems to be happy as, sadly, he takes his last breaths, and this happens to Luke.
I love you. We love you so much.
Died from blood loss. Magna then stops Luke from reanimating by stabbing him in the head. The friends gather around his body, crying as Luke leaves this world. Later, Luke is buried within the Commonwealth, and a plaque is put up to honour him. R.I.P. Luke Abrams. So, Luke was a really cool character. Such a happy-go-lucky guy, and the actor just brings a real charm and joy to the man. I really wish we saw more of Luke in Season 11, because he really just pops back out of nowhere, only to die 2 episodes later. I like how he starts the series almost pretty useless, like he's just been lucky that he's not died yet, and that these women have kept him safe, to becoming a member of the militia and using that sick-ass weapon of his. His death was also really fucking sad. He's such a joyful dude, but he has such a painful, long drawn-out death. Jeez. Anyway, I really like Luke as a minor character. What do you guys think of him? Thanks for watching. Stay tuned next week next episode anyway, where we'll be covering Jules. I was going to combine them both, but it just didn't seem right to make Luke share a profile with Jules. So yeah, we're going to do a separate one on her. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.